How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing all right. I just woke up, so I just got here.
Anyway, um, no, so okay. So I'm a big fan of your work. I've been enjoying it mostly because you've just been going up against all sorts of people who just say all sorts of ridiculous nonsense. I've also noticed you've gotten a lot. You've been getting salty in these latest videos, bro. You all right?
Um, so I've been having some issues with TikTok. It's been absolutely stupid, and I talked about it in a recent video, but um the main thing that happened was, and this has been going on forever, but the the recent thing is I made a video making fun of some flat earth chick. But it was really, she was doing a Bible reading, and I told her to go read a verse that talks about a genocide, and she started reading it and she goes, "Wait, what? No, I don't like this." So the video got like 4 million views, and when that happens, a lot of psychopaths will reach out to you and tell you to, are there things we can't say?
I mean, this is like gonna go on YouTube, but I don't have it like for kids. Like it's so. I mean, I do curse, but yeah, I mean, I just kind of abide by community guidelines is all.
Oh,
But
well,
I'm sure
whatever.
you'll
So
be
like,
within that.
yeah. So like one dude told me to kill myself and just lots of stuff like that. So I reported a few of them because it's just like it's obvious harassment. Like one guy had multiple channels, so I would block him, and then he would just get on his other channel and be like, "You can't stop us." And so TikTok was like, "No, there's no violation in any of this stuff." I was just like, "Really? Kill yourself is not okay. Well, okay."
All right.
But then, but then, like a day later, TikTok was like, "We detected a lot of community guideline violations in your messages, so you are now banned from being able to send or receive messages." I was like, "You idiots!
Why
I
would you
sent
be banned
those.
over like
I
people
tried.
commenting to you?
I don't know." So I was
That's
a little bit
bonkers.
pissed off when I started that live stream, and I was
Okay.
just like, "You know what? I'm not gonna hold back on any of these idiots."
That's pretty good. That's good. I mean, like the latest one was like some guy, or it was like this like guy who he had a very heavy accent. I was listening to it on my car ride home. I was just like eating and listening to that. I thought it was very interesting. I don't know, man. Like, why do you think it is that there's like so many people that they just like they look at shit that's just like empirically true. Like, take for example evolution, and they're just like, yeah, it's bullshit. Like, I don't know how to pull people out of it.
Um, no, I don't know either. I mean, there's this famous quote. It's kind of hard to say it in a succinct way, but it basically goes like, "You can't use evidence to get somebody to change their mind about something that they used about an opinion they used emotion to form." It's kind of it's a very clunky thing to try to
But
say,
they will
but
sit there and say something like, "Oh, the Bible is the ultimate truth." You know, that would be an example. And it's just
well, yeah,
like,
I mean
what do you
they
mean?
didn't come to that reasoning by doing an investigation. I mean, sure, they read the Bible, but the Bible spoke to them. Like it's not objective. It's just something that gives them the warm fuzzies inside, right? So, I mean, this is the exact same kind of thing you'll see with people that are like sports fanatics and in politics. It like the stuff that I see with flat earthers and religious types, evolution deniers or whatever. I don't actually think it's all that much different from the other kinds of weird things people can believe for no good reason.
There's what's another thing that's really, I guess, like upsets me is that it's like a lot of the times these people aren't stupid. Like they're not dumb. Like not like they lack some sort of cognitive ability to be able to like understand anything. That they just really like this idea for one reason or another. They associate it with their identity, and man, it's just so hard to, I don't know, talk them out of it. It's very
Well,
frustrating.
I mean, once a belief becomes like identity defining, then then you're double screwed, because to abandon it would mean to destroy a part of yourself, and
Yeah.
who is willing to do that?
Well, so okay, how about this? Let me ask you. One thing I've noticed with your channel is that you stick to very specific topics, right? Evolution denial, science denial, religiosity. But do you ever delve into like the political sphere or no?
Um, I usually don't. I actually listen to a lot of I listen to two news programs almost every day. Breaking Points. I listen to pretty much every episode they do.
Yeah.
And I listen to the Daily, I would say probably at least twice a week. Sometimes they do stuff that I just don't care about. Um Like, I'm not a fan of Trump, but they had an episode today about Trump, like, oh, how Trump is avoiding all of his legal obligations and blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't really care. I don't necessarily trust them to give that great of an objective analysis on that. Although usually they do a pretty good job, but also I just don't care.
It's probably
Um,
it's probably a safer anyway to like because
Yeah.
you're guaranteed to alienate half of your audience, especially if you didn't start with it. So
Not my audience, no.
so would you like what would you say that your audience is mostly Democrats, Republicans? Like what would you say?
Oh, a lot of them. So I would say it's probably more. How do I want to say this? I would assume that it's probably more like left leaning, but I would honestly guess that my audience is kind of part of the group of people that feels disenfranchised by both parties, that absolutely hates them. That, for example, in this election probably won't vote because they couldn't have voted for Donald Trump anyways. Like, that was just basically a non-option. And the other guy, half of the Democratic electorate thinks that a genocide is going on, and he's funding it. So
Wait,
if I had to guess,
wait. I like brain fogged on that. They're funding what?
a genocide?
Okay, you're saying like with Israel, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, apologies. My game is distracting me a bit. I wasn't thinking that there was going to be this much text dialogue. So it's not super great. But so I actually don't think it's a genocide.
Oh, interesting.
Don't get me wrong, right? Netanyahu's an asshole. I just don't think it's a
Oh,
genocide based off
I
of
think he's
United Nations a distinction of what they would call a genocide. I actually thought about it and I wrote down like what I considered regarding what's and it's possible that in the future it could evolve into a genocide. It's just a matter of if it could happen.
Okay, well, there's obviously a billion different roads we could go down, but I would be really curious to hear, what have they not done yet that they would have to do for it to evolve to that point?
They would have to start gunning down Palestinians in the West Bank. If they gun down Palestinians in the West Bank, I'm 1,000% on your side.
Okay, well, that's been happening in slow motion with the illegal settlements. I mean, people will literally go and take somebody's home. The IDF will serve as their bodyguards, and they will kill them, and nothing happens.
Well, so here's what I can at least
okay.
provide. I can provide the Israel-Palestine live UA map, which what it's doing is that it is grabbing particular points of violent protests or things that are happening in regards to the war itself, and they're grabbing it from multiple sources, from people's Twitter, like personal Twitter accounts of them just writing about it, just to news stations, to they pull up a lot of different sources, and they'll give you like the particular like what happened at this point. Everything that I've seen that is happening have been like violent protests or protests that end in violence, to like Israeli security forces raiding homes. I have seen that. but I'm not seeing like this like systematic gunning down in the West Bank, right? You would see a bunch of red pox all throughout this map if that were the case. But you do see a bunch of, I'm sorry, blue marks if that were the case. Like you could see it all over Gaza, where it's like it's pretty indiscriminate in the killing that they're doing. But if they really, really hated those Palestinians, they could absolutely go into the West Bank and just start gunning them down. And I don't see that.
So I don't really think that addresses what I said about the fact that they've been squatters have taken, I mean, I don't know how many illegal settlements there are said to be, but I'm not uncertain that it's at least thousands. And that's been going on for decades.
I mean, I mostly use Reuters articles to like see like what's going on with Israel Palestine. I haven't heard a whole lot of these squatters. Could you provide me something that I could just take a look at?
A source? I mean, I can try to find one.
Like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just curious, just because like I haven't heard of this. What you're talking about?
Does United Nations count?
Of course. Why would they not?
So, I mean, I can send this in the chat, and I am doing this on the fly, so who knows? But this says from 2012 to 2022, the population of Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank had grown from 500,000 to over 700,000. These settlers lived illegally in 279 Israeli settlements across the occupied West Bank, including 14 settlements in the occupied East Jerusalem, with a total population of more than 229,000 people. So, yeah, there have been stories about this for years and years and years. Like literally, people from the United States will go there and they will say, "I am an Israeli," and they'll just take somebody's home, and sometimes they like get chased out of there and it's not that big of a deal, but there have been cases where they have killed people, taken their home, and like I said, the IDF just acts as bodyguards.
Okay,
for this.
So there are some very particular settlements that are like effectively like, okay, this is Palestinian controlled in the West Bank. Are they breaking UN charters?
Well, it crosses the recognized boundaries.
Okay.
And Israel keeps redrawing the lines, saying no. Like they keep selling. They have this weird real estate thing. They're like, no, we're taking up all these areas because those are ours. Because they either reject lines that were drawn in '67 or whatever. The history of this is extremely complicated. I can't give super detailed. I can't give tons of details on this, but just in general, these are things that I have heard about that are going on.
Okay.
But so the West Bank thing isn't really all that interesting for now for me, but I am really curious why. It's like you said, if they did what they're doing in Gaza in the West Bank, then it would. Why on earth does Gaza not count?
So it's not that Gaza doesn't count. It's that if you look at the exact verbiage that exists regarding the UN charters that were drafted in the it could have been the 40s or the 50s. I have it written down, where it was like, okay, this is what you need in order for it to be a genocide. You have to match these criteria. You know, it's a law document. And so I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, here, I'll pull it up exactly. Don't worry. I mean, I could easily change my opinion on this. I am not married to this idea. I just looked at it as it was and was just like, okay. So let me see if I can pull it up here. So it says the term genocide is defined and characterized through specific criteria. The concept established legally under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which was adopted in 1948. And I can go ahead and I'll link the source to what I'm talking about here. Open chat. There you go. United Nations. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's six. I'm sorry, 5 things that need to be met. So there's the acts. Committed requisite intent constitutes as genocide. Killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions leading to the group's physical destruction, imposing measure to prevent births within the group, or forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. The acts.
I hold on, sorry. I clicked on your link and I don't see that list that you're reading anywhere. It just says ratification of the Genocide Convention, background. So it's like, where are the 5 things on here? I just want to make sure I can.
Hold on.
Because I'm not going to be able to memorize them in my head.
Right here. Sorry, yeah, I'm giving you another link, but it's the PDF at the top, like where it says the background.
So under
Convention and Prevention of the Punishment of Crime of Genocide.
Okay,
sorry,
so
I should have linked
2,
that.
genocide means any of. Okay.
All right, so let me see, where was I? So, okay, the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Intent is a key element that distinguishes genocide from other forms of mass violence. Targeted group, the acts committed with the purpose of eliminating or harming that particular group. Scale, the genocide can occur on a large or small scale involving mass killings or the systematic actions to destroy the targeted group. The scale does not diminish the severity to note. The systematic nature. Genocide is characterized by the systematic and organized actions involving government or state authorities, militias, or other groups carrying out the acts with the coordinated effort. So in order for the actions of Israel to be considered a genocide, all of these requisites must be met. Looking at it from an objectively verifiable point of view, we could observe whether or not it is a genocide. So I said here...
Okay. So with that, do you just have skepticism that that South Africa's case was poorly done, and that I don't know what it was, a dozen judges, including the U.S. judge who signed off on it and said, yes, there's a plausible case here. Do you think that they read the UN Charter on what genocide is incorrectly?
It could be plausible, but ultimately what would end up happening is that the United Nations would likely be the arbiter. I mean, of course, any country can disagree with it, but like it would, I feel like it needs to go through the UN because they are the ones that are drafting these charters, defining the legal term of genocide.
Yes. So the International Court of Justice, the ICGN. I don't know specifically. Are they a wing of the United Nations, or do they just work with them? Is it a completely separate body?
I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure at all.
Well, because the way I understood this whole thing was going to be, this is going to be, I don't know. I guess we could figure that out. But I think for now, I mean, we could just go through the list of things that are on here. So like I'm looking at Article 2, the first thing, killing members of the group. I mean, that's obviously happening. Right?
I agree.
In Gaza. And like one of the tactics that Israel will use is they'll say, for example, well, we're going after, like, I don't know what it is. The last I heard it was 30,000 dead. And they'll say something like, well, yeah, but about 12,000 of those are members of Hamas.
Yeah.
And that's loaded language because Hamas is their government. Like if you're a mailman, like well, maybe not a mailman,
well, I mean,
but like
Hamas
if you're a secretary,
wants to kill them, right?
Sorry,
they want to make sure that there is no Israel. They want every single Jew dead.
So I know like in the 80s that was part of the Hamas charter. From what I understand, it's not now. I'm not defending Hamas. I think that they're terrible, but that is their government. So when you bomb a building and you kill 100 people, and there were absolutely no militants in that building, okay, but there were some like people that work for the government, like a secretary, maybe somebody that's in charge of some administration, right? Because they have the right to have a government. It's one of the worst governments on the planet. Don't I don't disagree with that. But you can't kill people for their opinion. So they'll say we killed a bunch of members of Hamas, as if that's the same thing as killing terrorists or combatants or members of the military, right? Like, well, I mean, I could say more, but that's the main thing.
Okay. I mean, like, I don't disagree with you here at all, I guess. But I guess, like, I mean, if we look back at the UN Charter here,
yeah,
I guess,
my
what I'm
point is,
caught
you
up
can
on,
be killing citizens, and like you can say, oh, these members of Hamas were killed, but they're still citizens. That's like the main thing.
I agree. At the same, well, I mean, you know how guerrilla war works, right? I mean, anytime there's a guerrilla war, that's immediately there's civilians killed. Like, there's really no way to avoid not killing civilians. With that being said, though, I think Netanyahu's gone way too far, right? I completely agree.
Hamas does a better job of not killing civilians than Israel does. Because on October 7th, on October 7th, about half the casualties were IDF soldiers. I didn't know that. I thought they just
that's because it's wait. That's because you have to be in the military. It's compulsory in Israel.
No, that's not why they only. Okay, I don't know what you were trying to say there. I thought that what happened was they just paratrooped into the festival and whatever else, and they just gunned down random people. And a lot of that happened, but about half the people were IDF soldiers. So, I mean,
yeah, that would follow, because a lot of them they have to join the military.
Right. So you're saying they weren't like, it's like they were off duty or something.
Yeah, it's like it's compulsory. Like you don't have a choice. It's one of the things in Israel. Like they pride themselves on this thing that it's like you have to, like, for X amount of time, during these years, you have to go to the military.
Okay, and no sensible person would say, well, if you kill somebody who's in the reserves in their sleep, you killed an active soldier. So I don't know exactly how it all counted out. I just knew that I thought it was basically all civilians that were killed, but that wasn't the case. But the point there was that
it is civilians. It's just that the civilians are also the soldiers, especially if you. I don't know exactly how they select it. Like, maybe it's at a specific age. I don't know. I'm just rattling off ideas on that one.
Right. So, anyways, so they're killing members of the group. Like, we don't disagree that that's happening. I think that they are deliberately killing members of the group indiscriminately.
Okay,
I don't necessarily.
Let me ask you this though, right? Like, do you
policy?
think that the intent of Israel is to destroy all Palestinians?
Well, that's what they say. Benjamin Netanyahu in Hebrew repeatedly says Israel will go from the river to the sea. There will be no Palestinian state. He talks about
I mean, that guy's a psychotic right winger that, like, a lot of people
not just him. Like, Ben Gvir and a lot of others in that cabinet talk about it. They talk about nuking the place, that they should do it, turn it into a parking lot. I hope all the kids die. Well, that was
but in the West Bank. This is where I'm stuck. I'm stuck again. I'm like, dude, they're not killing every single. There are Palestinians in Israel right now. They're living there. So it's like, I don't understand. Like if they wanted to kill all Palestinians, they could round them up and just start gunning them down in the street. But they're not doing that. They're doing it in Gaza because they believe that there's, like, Hamas there and that there's guerrilla warfare involved. With that being said, though, I don't think cutting off the water and electricity, like, that's pretty awful. Like, bombing a hospital, that's pretty awful. Like, there's a lot of, like, situations where I'm just like, yeah, Netanyahu fucking sucks. But at the same time, I'm just like, I just don't think it's a genocide on basis that they could easily kill every single Palestinian, like, literally tomorrow.
Have to.
Then I would be on your side.
Okay, so I think I can cut to the chase with the question. If the IDF or like Israel, whatever, nuked Gaza, every single one of them died. which they would also, I guess, get to claim that they eradicated Hamas, except I think there are a lot of Hamas members that live in Qatar, and they're not even trying to like have them arrested and extradited or anything. But anyways, let's just say they completely nuke Gaza. I think by your logic, it still wouldn't be a genocide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're not in the West Bank. Like, again, I'm but well, maybe, I mean,
They
well,
don't-
do you think
that's-
that like
Gaza
us bombing
is
like
enough.
Japan was a genocide? Is that a genocide? Like, our goal is not to systematically kill every Japanese person during World War II. We just wanted to show them like, hey, look at our power, right?
You
Like,
don't
it had nothing to do with like, hey, let's kill them all.
You don't have to kill everybody for it to be a genocide.
Well,
I mean, Hitler wasn't successful,
intent-
therefore it wasn't a genocide.
okay, so I think
And they didn't want to. They didn't want to globally
I'm
eradicate.
like reading my notes
Jews.
here, and it says
You wanted
like,
to
the
eradicate
intent to
them
destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group.
Yeah, Gaza
I
would
mean,
be
so
enough.
the in part. Yeah, I think I'm shit. I think I actually have to reformat my thinking on this because it says or in part. It's the fact that it has this or. Okay. Yeah, no, I think I got to rethink it.
Yeah, that's fine. So I mean, that's the killing thing. Like, obviously, they're killing people.
Wait, you
and
just
there's-
owned me in a debate. Do you understand how hard it is to do that?
it's par for the course for me. So
I will post this on YouTube. This is great.
So what's the second thing on there? Causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. So I don't have any comments on the, or actually, I should say I don't have many comments on the, what would you call it? Psychological warfare that Israel is playing. But they have done some specific, pretty disgusting, horrible things. Like, they've intentionally targeted non-militants before. Like, I can't remember his name, but there was this poet. He's a Palestinian poet, and he just goes around talking. He's not one. From what I've heard, he's never said something like "destroy Israel," blah blah blah. But he's probably had some extremely harsh and charged language for them. Which, if you killed hundreds of members of my family, I would probably have pretty horrible things to say as well. Sure. But nothing like he's not a member of Hamas or anything like that. They intentionally airstriked his home, and I think like 49 people were killed, but he lived.
Jesus.
But then a couple of months ago, they found out where he is again. They targeted him and they killed him. So that's kind of an example of psychological warfare because they have these hit lists of people like that, and they have gone after them before. I would say, like, in a way, I think this Israel campaign, there is a lot of shock and awe to it. Like, I mean, you might not be able to grow food in Gaza ever again. They put seawater in it. I mean,
yeah,
that sterilizes the soil. This is it's not scorched earth, but it's salt of the earth. Very Old Testament. They've burned down their fields too.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do not like Netanyahu's tactics, and I think he right now he's ludicrously unpopular among Jewish citizens. Just so you know, like everyone does not like this guy,
they support what he's doing,
he's likely going to be facing war crimes, in the future. And I was saying that even before, you convinced me.
Yeah. Apart from that, I don't know. I don't think I really have anything to say on the causing serious bodily or mental harm. Well, I mean, the bodily harm. I mean, that's. I heard a statistic. It was like every day 10 Palestinian kids lose their limbs or something like that. I can't remember specifically what it was, but it was pretty horrible. I mean, like the Flower massacre, that was pretty obvious. They just shot those people for no reason. It was just so awful. Incredibly stupid.
I agree.
Part C, deliberately inflicting.
I mean, you're not going to see me defending like these violent actions. I mean, they're just terrible. Like it's just like unneeded suffering for no reason.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Part C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. it's been under siege since October 8th. We talked about the deliberate cutting off of the utilities and running water and electricity. That's pretty bad. But they won't let food go in there. There are protesters, Israeli protesters at Gaza blocking.
I'm seeing mixed
trucks from
reports on
going in.
this, by the way. I didn't want to say whether or not that they were or not. Like, each side is blaming each other for doing it. It's really weird. And because I mean, if Reuters couldn't like figure it out on their own, then I mean, what hope do I have? Like, I'm just like, you know, who is blocking it? Like, it was just like, well, it's kind of, you know, it was like, oh, it goes into like this warehouse, and then like after that, like the warehouse goes into like individual trucks, but we don't know where the trucks go. Sometimes they get raided, and it's like, it's just really weird. Like, I don't know, it's really hard to say exactly where it is.
Yeah,
it could be a bit of both. I mean, you know, you don't.
I never saw photos on the ground of this. I've just been listening to people describe it. But there are protesters, and I've heard them be interviewed. So this is outside. But they are just, you know, like when the BLM riots, protests, whatever you want to call them, were going on in 2020, people were blocking highways and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So it seems to be that sort of thing. And the IDF is there acting as bodyguards. They put up motherfucking bouncy castles there for the kids to play in. And they just sit there and they're like, yeah, we're just making sure that these people blocking aid, making sure they're all right. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, the IDF is there crushing any dissenting protest, Israeli or Palestinian.
It's crazy.
So, I mean, they're aiding and abetting the blocking of food going to us. And 2 million people are now in famine. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, no, I've been seeing photos of that. It's actually terrible. Yeah. Like, I have nothing to say about that other than, I mean, it's just horrendous that to see that sort of thing. I mean, zero defense for that. I mean, again, I was never a fan of Netanyahu, especially after this war.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the psychological warfare. I mean, they've destroyed graves. I don't know if they're doing that. It seems like a lot of things that the IDF does, they do it for funsies. There's been all the reports of they're going into people's houses and cooking meals, putting on ladies' underwear, walking around, going... They've been bombing mosques and filming it and putting it on TikTok and nothing. So actually, I said I don't have a lot to say about the psychological warfare, but there actually is quite a lot to say about that. A lot of that, the most generous thing I can say... is not all this is necessarily Israel is doing it. Because they talk about a lot of this comes down to breakdowns of what they call command and control. So like, for example, when the 3 hostages that got freed were shot and killed, that was just because what had been told through the chain of command was like, shoot anything that moves, right? And so they make these insane horrendous mistakes, and that's what they blame it on. And like, I don't think that's a
but it's like they did that by design. They're doing it on purpose.
Well, I wouldn't say so. I'm trying to be generous here. I wouldn't say that they're doing that to just massacre as many ordinary people as possible. I don't think that that's necessarily the intent. Those horrible things happen, but it's not an excuse. Like, you can't just say, like, you can't just throw your hands up and be like, oopsie, we're incompetent. Like, no, you will still be charged.
I mean, you killed a bunch of people.
Whatever. Yeah. So
you killed a bunch of people. Like, period.